Hello, folks. Hello. Welcome to episode 65. This is going to be all about discernment. My wayward co-host will be joining us hopefully relatively soon. In the meantime, I'm going to get things started with a small, quick prayer to fire to get things started off. Hail, sons and daughters of Muspelheim, hail fire itself. Hail, Miko Eldevator, hail Eldevator. Hail, oldest ancestor. Hail, Kakahai, hail Sun, hail Loki, hail Glut, hail Logi, hail Sart, hail Sinmora. Ho, Shkorimando, ho, Majikiwas. Hail, Miko Eldevator, hail Eldevator. Hail, oldest ancestor. Let's do it all. Okay. That is lit. And I'm going to cleanse the space and prepare it for the show tonight. Hail, eldest ancestor. Thank you for cleansing this space. Thank you for preparing us within and without. Thank you for preparing us for a good show tonight. Thank you for helping us with discernment, clarity, and judgment. Let's do it. Hey, Emily. Good to see you here. Hey, Charlie. Good to see you as well. I am going to do a last minute check around and make sure that we are copacetic. So, I'm sure it will come up later in the episode. However, I'm going to set up some of my mixed drinks now. One of the nice things about going to Total Wine is that sometimes you find these little hidden gems, or maybe not so hidden, but just ones that you weren't sure about. This is Honey Old Fashioned, and this is a bottled cocktail from Detroit City Distillery. I really like these guys. These have featured on the show before. Hey, Destiny, good to see you. All right, I'm going to crack this sucker. And this is going to be straight up my first offering and my first drink. Hail to the Kinreg, the gods, the ancestors, and the Vetir. All right. And splash a little bit in here. Excellent. So I am really excited about tonight's episode because I wasn't anticipating this particular request for a show. And I really appreciate the folks that suggest show topics. It's a little less mental work on our part. It's a little more, what can we do to entertain you folks out there, and also what is something that we need to bone up on, or we need to think about, or put our minds towards. So this is a really cool opportunity for us to sit down and figure out, in this case, what we feel about discernment, how we engage in it, and appreciate any and all audience participation. So this is one of those things where I talk about it so much, sometimes I forget what I haven't said about it. And so revisiting this topic in a longer format show like this is always a lot of fun. Especially because there's always some aspect of it that I have forgotten, or that I have not covered in a while. Because I can say, well, you got to use your discernment. What the hell does that mean to your average pagan? What does that mean to folks within our community? What specifically are you folks looking for when somebody says, I want to use discernment? How do I do that? It is such a wide-ranging conversation that I'm so happy we get to have them here. So I appreciate everybody that, again, sent in the requests for this show. Maleck is going to be joining us. They are just running a little bit behind, so not a big deal. I'm just going to chatter at y'all. In the meantime, if you have questions about discernment, if you have things that you want us to cover during this episode, slap them in the chat on the YouTube channel, and we can pop them up and we can work on them. Otherwise, you can hit us up in the Discord. Ideally in the questions, but I know there were some left in the general chat. And I want to express an appreciation for that. So, with that being said, I am going to mix up my next drink, since I don't have to actually mix up the old-fashioned. This is a Smirnoff's Infusions of Lemon and Elderflower. Hey, Maleck.
Hey, I am so sorry.
ADHD's a bitch, ain't it?
It is, and on top of that, I've been putting plants in the ground and doing that raised garden bed for the last week. And I'm flipping my sleep schedule because I start work next week.
Jesus fuck.
So I've been a little all over the place, and those are excuses, but I am very sorry for being late.
Shit happens. It's okay. I was chattering at people while you were getting on.
Good. Cool.
What are you drinking?
I am hurriedly pouring myself a mixture of Frederick's Bee's Knees, ginger Bee's Knees mix, refreshing blend of honey, lemon, with a hint of ginger. That hint is a lie. It is a punch of ginger. Along with Traverse City Whiskey Company, small batch and handcrafted. Their rye, which is 90 proof or 45% ABV, small batch number 7. It's really, really good. I do highly recommend both of these things. The Bee's Knees mix is quite good and makes for good, easy cocktails, meaning just throw liquor in it and it's tasty. And the rye is impeccable.
Excellent. So, like I said, I've got my zero sugar infusions of lemon and elderflower Smirnoff. I've got, where the hell did that thing go? My Detroit City bottled cocktail, which is a honey old fashioned.
Oh, cool.
Yes. And aside from that, I also have, I may drink this, the New Holland American Oatmeal Stout.
Tell me how it is. I haven't had that yet.
You know what? I haven't either, so this will be an experiment for both of us.
Heck yeah.
I've also got Four Roses, Maker's Mark, and my 14-year Glenfiddich over here, so who knows what I'm going to hit. I also, where the hell did it go? I have a St. Ambrose draft mead of John Lemon.
Oh, yeah, that's pretty solid. St. Ambrose is one of the ones that I like their stuff a lot. They're one of my go-tos.
Yeah, them and Shrams are just,
Yeah.
Hey, Kunian, good to see you.
Hey, y'all. Again, apologies for being late. Woo!
We are professionals. Bum, 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 bum.
Sure are.
Well, now that you're here, we can get into it.
Please. Have you done the prayer yet?
I just did an opening fire prayer, so no. Would you like me to do one?
I will take care of it.
Go for it.
By way of apology. Hail to the gods of the hard times. Those who watch over us when all we have is a rock. When we are behind the 8 ball, when we are behind schedule and we do not have enough. Those who watch over us when we are persecuted, when we are forced to hide, when we are caught. Hail to the ancestors who lived and died by the strengths of their communities. Those who died when that was not enough. When their wits and their will ran out. When their strength was at its end. Unnamed and unknown, for far too long, and possibly forever. May you find peace and arms who love you. And if you would will it, watch over us, that we do not join you too soon. Hail to the gods who love us in the hard times. Hard for us, and hard in total. May we always find the rock we need. Back warm you and keep you. Back warm us and keep us all.
Awesome. Thank you.
My pleasure. That was not how I expected that prayer to go. That is often the case, but you know.
That is A-okay. That is how prayers go. I'll be right back. I'm going to make this offering real quick. I already kind of introduced our topic of discernment, but I kind of wanted to get your feeling on what you felt discernment is not.
Yeah. I'm also pulling up the various questions we've got, but so as I'm sure Sarenth has already said, discernment broadly was our topic for tonight. We'd also floated talking about differences among various spirits and how that changes things, how we approach them, if at all. We were asked differences in how different spirit types communicate and tips on discernment. Is the spirit who they say they are? Are they fucking with me, etc.? And maybe an exploration on how to get a feel for what kind of spirits you sense around you when woo shit is going on. That last bit especially was from Estrella and from other people on our Discord. The last bit was especially from Estrella, who has been a guest on the show before. If you have not, check out their episode because they are fantastic, both here and on around Grandfather Fire. Discernment. My take broadly with discernment, because Sarenth isn't here to talk, so I'm just going to ramble at will because I have control of things.
That was the
idea. My thoughts on discernment broadly are that, one, we don't have nearly fucking enough of it. I actually ran into an example of that today that I may share later, though that might be an after party thing. Because I haven't had enough time to actually anonymize it in my brain, so that would take a little doing to do on air. But we'll get there if we get there.
If we get there.
But discernment is a thing that we don't do nearly enough of. And I apply this broadly. Discernment for me is synonymous with critical thinking, by which I mean thinking critically, which is to say approaching things thoughtfully and carefully, not trusting at face value. That is not the same thing as being a conspiracy theorist or disbelieving everything.
But Maleck, you can do your own research.
I can do my own research, and that means verifying sources and determining when things are and are not bullshit.
You mean not just when they just agree with my preconceived notions?
Right.
That seems like sus bullshit. That sounds like liberal bias to me. Mel, if you can't tell, Maleck and I have gone rounds on fucking with each other on this.
Just a few.
Maleck, incidentally, and I, for whatever measure you wish to put it at, are both trained scientists.
Yes.
Maleck in a much harder field than my very much squishier field.
I would not agree with that if by harder you mean difficulty. I would agree with that if by harder you mean...
I mean much more based in hard numbers.
Yes.
Because if you fuck up a chemical equation, everybody gets to pay for it. If I make a minor miscalculation, my research might be sus, but I'm not gonna, melt somebody's lungs.
Yeah, no, you're not wrong.
I know.
Anyway,
Pardon me while I bask in that.
The thing with critical thinking is that you will often find yourself at least partially wrong, which is good and important. If you are right all the time, you're not doing it well, and you need to work on that just straight up. And that includes myself, that includes Sarenth. If you are right all the time, you are not the world's smartest person. You are, in fact, doing it incorrectly.
You mean that my results have to be falsifiable? What bullshit's this? I need to never be wrong.
I mean, that's not even the thing. Like, you can technically be falsifiable and correct 100% of the time. That is technically possible. It's that it's so unlikely that a fallible human will do that, that no, that's a good litmus test. It's not a pure logical proof. It's a litmus test of, actually, I don't believe you. Which is actually an important part of how I approach that, which is there are kind of logical proofs, right? You can demonstrate that this is logically true. A plus B equals C, and you can demonstrate that. Or falsify it, depending on how the proof goes.
Depending on how shit you are at the math.
And a lot of times with that's not even math logic. That's just formal logic.
I know. I'm being a bit of a smartass because I sucked so hard at my stats course.
Fair. As Emily says, if you are never surprised, then you're probably being led by a sock pupper or sock puppet. Wasn't possible.
Oh, it's a sock pupper. It's cool.
It's my delusion and illusion, and I'm going to live in it. Thank you.
But yeah, so there's a distinction between like gut feelings and good litmus tests and logical proofs. Because the fact is, most information doesn't fit well into logical proofs that are falsifiable in that kind of formalist way. That's just kind of how it is.
Also keeping in mind, like, because we're specifically talking about paganism and witchcraft and the occult, like, this is usually a step beyond where most people are applying formalized logic, which is a problem, actually.
Yes. And that's really what I'm getting at is
A plus B equals C does not, matter less because the A and the B happen to be a sigil and a circle.
Exactly. And this is where a lot of the issue lies, I find, is that people are like, well, it matters to me, and therefore, like, okay, that's great. You can believe what you want, but if I can demonstrate that you're full of shit, then you're full of shit. And demonstrate, please keep in mind, when I say demonstrate, that is a pretty high bar of proof, right? That is a preponderance of evidence suggests this. And also, please hear the words that I'm using, right? Preponderance of evidence, not all the evidence, preponderance of evidence suggests, not proves. Good scientists very rarely use the word proves.
The other thing to keep in mind too is that because we're talking about religion and spirituality, our burden of proof might actually be less than what somebody would accept for supernatural, quote unquote. I consider, like, what most people consider supernatural, I consider natural. Like, magic to me is not supernatural, it's natural. This is a philosophical difference between myself and other folks.
Yeah.
It is important to note that, because if that's your baseline, your burden and your criterion for what proof is differs a great deal than what other people's will.
Indeed. And also applying this to both the experiences that we have and also to our source material and the people that we are speaking to. If for example, Sarenth walks into a Discord server that we're both on and makes some claims, I need to approach that critically. In particular, because I know and trust and love Sarenth, that means that I need to approach the things that Sarenth says more carefully than I would someone else who I am automatically going to be more suspicious of. Right? It is
If Sarenth comes waltzing into your Discord server, touting a new title, please look at it with a jaundiced eye. I don't give a flying fuck how well you know the person. If somebody all of a sudden pops into your server and you've known them for 20 years and says, I am the grand this, that, or the other, side-eye them and tell them so. Maybe in private, depending on politic, but an ethic of hospitality and guest hospitality, host hospitality.
For sure.
But don't let that shit fly without somebody saying something.
Yeah.
Because that's actually how a lot of insidious shit happens in our communities. Is because, well, I know this person, they wouldn't hurt anybody. Maybe not intentionally, but intent is not everything.
Right. People fuck up all the time, and shit happens.
Yep. So, and it's not even necessarily about harm. It can also just be about this person is being misled by the spirits they're talking with, or this person hasn't done their due diligence. These spirits are encouraging them to do something that could compromise their integrity, and they just haven't realized it yet because they've never worked with these spirits before.
Right. And the spirits may or may not mean them harm. The spirits might just say, yeah, this is a great idea, and not pay attention to the fact that you're talking to a human.
Right. Again, intent does not fucking matter after a point.
Yeah.
Like the spirits can be like, I really want to make sure this person's name lives forever, and they make you do something really fucking stupid.
Right. Another thing also is, are they even talking to spirits, or like Emily suggested, are they talking to a sock puppet, right? Is this just you talking to yourself and convincing yourself that it is outside phenomena?
For the purposes of this discussion, let's define what a sock puppet is in case folks are watching this who don't know what a sock puppet is.
That's a good idea. So a sock puppet, as for the purposes of this discussion, is when you are doing spiritual work and believe you are talking to an outside force, but the reality is that you are talking mostly or only to subconscious or semi-subconscious impulses, right? You believe that you're talking to somebody else, right? Let's use, for example, Odin. You believe you're talking to Odin, and everything he tells you is great and lovely and exactly what you want to hear, or the opposite, right? Everything he tells you is awful and the worst thing, and he's super mean to you for no reason. Like, that's both of these are warning signs.
Yeah, both of these are red flags that you need to do some more work on discernment.
Right. But so we're talking to Odin, and everything he's telling us is lovely and the best thing, and we're the super special sun child, and etc. And we've never made a mistake in our lives. And then you go to a diviner, and it turns out that, oh, yeah, you have never spoken to, you go to even multiple diviners, and they're like, yeah, you've never spoken to Odin in your life. And none of the things that you were hearing from him match up with the lore. I'm giving examples of how to do discernment, but the thing that you are talking to is in reality your subconscious impulses, the voice in your head just talking to you, telling you things you want to hear.
Mm-hmm. People can have a very rich internal life, such that they don't know how to differentiate between clairaudience and their own thoughts. This can also pop up for folks who are especially, it's the opposite of being, oh gods, I had this pulled up the other day. There is such a thing as having such a rich internal dialogue that you're actually like more, it's kind of the opposite of aphantasia in the
hyperphantasia.
Yeah, it's like hyperphantasia or hyperauralia. That's it.
Yeah.
So depending on your proclivities, depending on your brain wiring, quite literally aphantasia or hyperphantasia is a matter of brain wiring, not spirit wiring. When we talk wiring on this show, usually we're talking about being spiritually wired, not how you're hardwired, but these make impacts on each other.
Yes, absolutely. Also, for those who are not aware, aphantasia is a state of being where you are unable to visualize internally in your head. So if you say to someone with normal visualization, which I forget the term for, eufantasia maybe, picture an apple, they will see to some degree or another an apple. We're in America, so it's usually a red apple. Someone with aphantasia will know what you are referring to, but will not be able to create an image of it in their mind.
And it is a spectrum, because there are people with aphantasia who can visualize but not color, or visualize shapes but not defined objects.
Yeah, right. It's a spectrum between completely zero visualization and hyper visualization, where it is as good as real. It is, in fact, on the most extreme end of hyperphantasia, it is almost debilitating, because it can be so good visualization that distinguishing between reality and mental images can be difficult.
Yep.
That usually also comes with other mental issues. Hyperphantasia on its own is usually not a mental issue, but like there are other underlying problems that feed in there. We are also beginning to talk outside of my realm of expertise.
The point of this is that methods of discernment will vary based on your mental wiring, your spiritual wiring, and what your body will and will not accept as inputs.
Yes.
If you're somebody with nerve damage, in all likelihood, that is not going to be a sensation that you're going to want to receive spiritual information through, because it's hard to discern what the fuck it is.
Yep.
If you can discern it at all.
If you can discern it at all, right? In general, I always like to pimp out Jim Two Snakes spiritual accounting, even though I don't actually use it, but it is useful as base principles, right? Spiritual accounting PDF guide.
Yep.
That is
it's
available.
Literally an Excel sheet that you make where you evaluate what your spirits tell you.
Yep. And based on community. So what is the community saying about the spirit, if there is a community? And that includes things like going to diviners. What does the lore say about the spirit, assuming there is lore about the spirit? And then what are the actual physical effects? So if you ask the spirit for omens, in order to demonstrate that they're real, did you get the fucking omens that you asked for?
Right.
And that's those are the three legs of the stool of discernment that Jim recommends, which is, I think, a really good way to do it. And it's a lot of like, I said this to some friends recently. A lot of my magic, a lot of my religion and spirituality is about real world things, right? Does it make a difference in your life? If it does not, to steal the other thing, does it make the corn grow?
Yeah.
If it does not, then why am I bothering with this?
Yeah, that's such a good line from Jim. I fucking love that he brought that
up. And if the spirit that you were talking to cannot make differences in the real world, in your actual life, why are you bothering with them? How do you know that they're real?
Yep. And the other thing too about discernment is that relevance matters, actually. Being told you're this or that or the other grand thing is fantastic, but what the fuck does that have to do with anything? In my case, when Othin came forward and said, you're my son, what I didn't realize at the time was all the spiritual, political implications that would bring, and how that has unfolded in my life as a real identifiable phenomenon, if to nobody else but to my personal experience of my spiritual life.
Right. And that's a point that it's worth diving into, is different weights of decisions will have different levels of discernment that go into them, right? Yep. You don't have to get 3 blind divinations and an informed divination and 6 omens and read the lore.
And a partridge in a pear tree.
And a partridge in a pear tree, all for, this spirit would like an offering of water. Okay, I can get water out of my tap. If they're fine with that, let's move on.
Right. And generally speaking, most spirits are, because historically speaking, it's only been in recent history that, for one, we have taps, for 2, that they're clean enough to offer at all.
Yeah.
Or drink out of.
Yeah. So, an offering of clean water that I can give to a spirit, a lot of spirits like it. It's easy for me to do. It costs me almost nothing. I have all of the accoutrement I need, including space and materials, to make this offering. It costs me basically nothing. I can do that. I don't need to do a bunch of discernment on that. Particularly if it's spirit that I already know well, right? Once you build up that level of discernment, it's a little easier to say, yeah, I know the spirit likes water. They ask me for it every week.
In my case, because I have iron in my water, I will actually be discerning on what source of water in my house, because I have a reverse osmosis filter. If I am offering to something Fey or Fey adjacent, I will not use the main tap water for that. Because that could be seen as trying to poison them.
Yeah, no, that's fair enough. Also good and important, right? Knowing the rules is part of discernment. And this is like where I said applying it not just to the spiritual phenomenon, but also to the sources that you are reading, right? Snorri Sturluson is one of the main sources for heathen lore. He was also a Christian who had a very specific political reason for doing the writing he was doing. He was doing a couple of things with his writings. One of them was to preserve a poetic tradition after Christianization that was heavily tied into pagan beliefs. Two, he was trying to create a narrative between a shared mythological narrative between, I believe it was Norway and Ireland, in order to allow for a political regime change and for the king of, again, I think it was Norway, to take over Iceland. He had a political goal in mind.
Hakon the Good, I believe, yes.
Yeah, right. Like he had political goals when he was writing the Prose Edda. That was part of what he was doing.
Especially because it was his seat at risk. He had a fucking valid reason for wanting to curry favor with certain royalty. And that does not diminish his status as probably the best source for Norse mythology and mythology from that region generally.
Yeah.
As a method of comparison.
It's also still a thing you have to look at. You have to take this into account.
Right.
If you genuinely take his words at face value, then the Aesir, including
Trojans,
are Trojan sorcerers, right? Like, no, I don't believe you, actually. And so it becomes a process of what information, it becomes a negotiation with the text. What information are we keeping? And why?
Yeah.
What information are we, and of the information we're keeping, what are we prioritizing and what are we deprioritizing? Right? That whole introduction with the gods coming from Troy, no, I leave almost all of that out. There might be a sentence here or two that I take seriously, but it's deprioritized if it's taken seriously at all. On the flip side, the stories about Loki shaving Sif's hair, I take seriously and I prioritize, and they inform my practice, but also in context of shaving a woman's hair was a punishment for adultery. And what does that tell us about the text? And there's many ways that you can read the text in that context.
Right. But you have to have the relevant understanding and the relevant background to be able to discern what the fuck it is you're reading.
Yeah. Taking this out of the literary and into straight spiritual experience, right? A lot of it is, part of it is instincts and vibes based, which is a terrible thing to try to explain over the internet of, I don't know, does it feel dangerous?
I mean, well, okay, so the thing is that it's not just a gut reaction. It is a refined, educated, and experienced gut reaction at the end of the night. It is informed in the same way that my ability to form a hypothesis in psychology is based on my long years of being in the field of psychology, is partly based on the vibes I get from the patients I see.
No, 100%.
And I say, hey, these kinds of patients, do they have this kind of stare when they're in the middle of a delusional state? If so, then what? Like if my hypothesis is when a patient is undergoing a delusional state, they will usually have, say, what we usually call the 1,000-yard stare. If this is true 9 times out of 10, it is reliable enough that I can make sure my ass stays protected, because what is usually the problem of them coming out of that delusional state? Well, if somebody ruptures their delusional state, they become a target because they fucked it up. Or maybe they become the target because the delusion projects onto them. I have seen this happen. And that's the difference between somebody saying, well, I suppose this could happen, and I've seen it happen.
Yeah, right. I've had to do I was going to say reasonable amount, but it's actually an unreasonable amount of exorcisms in my life. Like, it is genuinely unreasonable the amount of times that I have had to pull an aggressive spirit out of someone who is possessing them against their will.
Right.
That is not a thing I want to have to do again. If I never have to do it again, I will be very happy for it. Having done it a few times, I can kind of, not 100%, not absolutely, but I can kind of see when a possession is going weird, when things are going sideways. And especially I can see when someone who is not supposed to be possessed suddenly is. Again, this could be a lot of other things. This could be a mental breakdown. This could be blood sugar problems. This could be 1,000 other things. So there are discernment, right? Right. There's
test his blood sugar.
Right. Test his blood sugar. What's his blood sugar at? Oh, it's dropping into the 50s. Okay, it is now hospital time.
Get this bitch a candy. Bitches love candies.
Alternatively, his blood sugar is 300 something.
Please dose him.
Please give him insulin right the fuck now. But yeah.
Definitely not from experience. Nope, never.
You pick up, and these are unfortunately things that you only learn through experience, and this is why we try to emphasize community so much. And things like real human physical teachers as much as I can, because a spirit teacher is not going to be able to teach you reliably how to pick up no, this possession is going sideways. We need to call it and start doing exorcism protocols, which don't start with, all right, rip this spirit out forcibly. It starts with negotiation, right? It starts with, hey,
I mean, not even that. It's sometimes just a reinforcement of what host and guest responsibilities are will be enough to correct a spirit.
Sure.
But reiteration of boundaries, negotiation based on those boundaries. I mean, and this is why when people are like, oh, well, I just open myself up to spirit and whatever needs to come through. It's like, oh, motherfucker. So not only no discernment, but also no boundaries. Neat. Yeah. All right. You must live an interesting, blessed life.
Certainly interesting. Blessed by certain definitions.
Right. Well, this is like, this is where discernment is really helped by other factors. Is your space set up correctly for the operation you're trying to do? If you're trying to do ceremonial magic, if you do not have at least some of the accoutrement, it is going to be so much harder to not only do it in a baseline sense, but also to discern whether or not it worked.
Yep.
Like, part of the reason that ceremonial magic works the way it does is because these are tried and true over centuries of compilations of various, and because a lot of these grimoires are basically fucking recipe books, like, just to be perfectly blunt about it.
They're halfway between recipe book and teaching manual, right? Where it was supposed to be, you were doing the work out of the textbook and also getting tutored on the side, and the textbook was full of fucking notes because, that doesn't work the way that it says in the textbook. You're actually supposed to do this, this, and this, and then it works. Okay. And these are all things that you have to know and keep in mind, and why context matters so much, right? If we're in the middle of a big possessory ritual and we're bringing in one of the pack spirits, for example, right? If we're bringing in Hunt and they start sitting down and putting together a flower crown, I doubt that's the correct spirit. Not that they couldn't, but it's unlikely. On the flip side, if we're bringing in Demeter for a complete other end of the spectrum, right? If we're bringing in Demeter and she starts asking for raw meat as an offering to be fed to the vessel.
As a non-chthonic theoi, that's very unusual. As a theoi generally, that's
Right.
unusual.
That's I don't believe you, actually.
Right. Right.
Is I don't believe you are who you say you are.
Yeah.
And this gets into a lot of what Estrella was asking. Is the spirit fucking with me? Are they who they say they are? Does their behavior comport with past behavior? You know, and that includes what's in the lore, right? Because what is the lore? It is recordings of behavior of gods and spirits.
And the thing to really emphasize with that is that it's map, not territory.
Yes.
What you're experiencing is the territory. What you're going through is the territory. Now, whether or not it is a reliable experience needs to be determined, but not in the moment. That's the over application of discernment is actually a problem too.
Can be, yes.
Well, at the top of the show, you mentioned that the lack of discernment is a problem in the community. Almost an over application, and maybe it's not discernment, but maybe it's just straight up doubt. Can be a real impediment to getting anywhere, because if you're constantly doubting your spirits when they are giving you basically golden experiences to draw information and work out of, that's going to make both your lives harder, because if you don't trust them on a baseline level, which is fine to start with, trust but verify, for fuck's sake. At some point, once you verify, you have to trust that your experience is genuine.
Yeah. And this goes back to what I was saying about like different levels of event have different things. If I'm calling a spirit into someone, right? If we're doing a big possessory ritual, that requires a level of discernment that goes well beyond the spirit asked me for a water offering.
Right.
These are wildly different contexts.
Right.
And you're not wrong, right? At all, right? If I put a spirit who I know well through a dozen tests every time they come in, depending on the spirit, they might get annoyed with that and stop answering the phone.
Yep.
Or they might say, fine, I'll come, but because I know you're going to put me through this dozen tests, you are paying a heavy price for it.
Yep. Why are you going to waste my fucking time if you don't believe me by now?
Yep.
Which is a legitimate reaction, because if every time like Maleck called me up on the phone and was like, hey, I want your spiritual insight on something, and then they spent the next half hour, 45 minutes debating me on my answer, I'd stop giving advice. Now, yeah. I'm not saying this in regards to Maleck. This is something that I've had to do with other people, of where I just straight up said, like, if you don't believe the words that are coming out of my mouth when you're the one contacting me for help, find another motherfucker, because I ain't the one.
Yeah, right. Find someone else. I don't have time for this shit.
I'm a flesh and blood human, at least in certain aspects, and so I can understand why spirits are like, neat, I'm done with this shit.
Yeah.
Because they are people at the end of the day.
Right. On the flip side, if I never put a spirit that comes in through any tests whatsoever, how do I know it's the right one? How can
even the gods test each other in the lore?
100%. You see this with Odin all the time.
Always.
Odin and Loki all the time, right? How do I know you are who you say you are? The riddle game, and that Odin is no true guesser. That's what one of his names comes from, is because he was able to answer a bunch of questions that no one else should have been able to answer.
Yeah, so the Vafthrudnismal, for instance.
Yeah, right. They were able to divine his identity because no one else would know this much fucking shit. This is a good point. Also, go for it. Also, specifying which base/side of a spirit that you are calling in when you call them is a helpful precaution when applicable. Very true.
Applicable, yes.
Yes. If you're calling in Grandma, you might just get Grandma. If you're calling in Odin, it is probably wise to differentiate if you are calling in the Lord of Gifts and Draupnir and the Christmas god versus Eager and
if you want Yolnir and you get Eager, you may have mispronounced something.
Right. Eager, for those who are not familiar with the Old Norse, means terror or terrible. Bringer of fear and awful things, basically.
I'll give you a gift.
Right? Bringing in Bolverker, which means literally evildoer, is a very different side of Odin than High King of Asgard.
Right.
Are these the same person? Yeah. They do very different things.
And the other thing too is like when you're calling in grandma, you should be specifying which grandma, because saying grandma, please come to me, there's a shitload of people in your family line whose name starts with grandma. Who the fuck are you talking about?
Yep.
Because if you get some old woman from the 1300s and you meant your recently deceased grandma on your mother's side, you need to use accurate verbiage and names.
And you should also be able to tell the difference, right? Like, yeah.
This is why we advise so much of having good connections with recently dead ancestors, even if they were kind of shits in life. At least knowing some of them will make your discernment process easier, because you can then test them against the spirits that you already know.
Exactly. And that's the thing in every culture that I have ever heard of where a living animist tradition, especially one that involves possessory work, which actually, now that I'm thinking about it, is all of the ones that I know any intimate details of, they have ways of testing whether the spirits are legitimate. It can be everything from, are they speaking the language that they spoke in life? Which, I mean, spirits can pick up languages after death. That's a thing that happens. But also, that's one of the tests in one of the cultures I'm aware of.
Yep.
Another test is a particular one of the Orisha, one of the male Orisha. I think it's Ogun. I always get him and Shango mixed up, which is not great.
No, it is not great. But what's the discernment piece that you're trying to bring forward?
The Lord of Iron will throw himself at live blades, will throw himself at naked blades, and they won't pierce his skin. They'll either turn aside or what have you. And that's a discernment point. If he gets cut, he's not possessed.
Yep. In some forms of Korean shamanism, there are ladders made out of blades that you have to climb as part of the possessory ritual to prove you're actually in possession.
Yeah.
I've seen those. Those are fucking wild. Like, these are genuine blades that they show you they can cut shit before they set the ladder up.
Yep.
And it's like,
like the whole walking across hot coals things, we have scientific explanations for how people do that. Normal people can do that.
Yep.
On the flip side, I have seen someone who is possessed grab a fire grate on a fireplace that had been burning for over 2 hours that was rip-roaring hot, and just move it with their bare hands. And I know from actual experience, because it was my fireplace, that if you touch that with your bare hands at that point in time, you are going to burn yourself. I know because I've done it. Emily says Ogun is the Lord of Iron. Okay, so I did have that correct. I'm terrible with names, and this is one of my shortcomings, unfortunately.
Honestly, though, this is like where, like, if you're unsure of the spirit, talking to an expert is such a big deal. Having experts to go to. This is why discernment is a community process and not a just I'm going to do it myself process, because I am not everybody's fucking expert, nor should I be.
Exactly. And also, getting back to sock puppets, it is really easy for even the best of us to fall into sock puppets. It is just too easy to listen to what your subconscious wants you to think.
Yep.
I've done it. I know you've done it too. It's not that hard.
It's not. But this is when, you come into the server, or you like hit up your friend and you're like, hey, look, so this happened to me. Does this sound like bullshit? And a good friend will tell you yes or no flatly, so it's not ambiguous.
Yes. Or even just be like, I don't know.
I don't trust that.
That doesn't sound right. Are you sure? And that should be a red flag, right? If you're coming to somebody with a really cool story and they're like, are you sure? Check things.
Yeah. And check things with people that aren't the person you just told.
Exactly. This is also where, and I'm going to say a thing that not a lot of people are going to like, but I'm going to say it anyway, and I stand by it. You should be discerning with your divination method. Can your divination method accurately divine things past, present, and future? Can you walk up to a diviner and say, hey, I need you to tell me XYZ thing about myself? And you should know the answers so that you can tell whether or not they're full of shit.
Yep. I will say, as somebody that has done professional reading, some of the most irritating readings is when somebody's trying to intentionally mislead me. It is okay to test your diviner.
Yes.
I will say that. It is okay to test your diviner. It's not okay to fuck with them. There's a difference.
Mm-hmm. There is good faith testing of, hey, you need to demonstrate to me that you're not full of shit. And there is also, no, you're being a dick. I'm hitting you with that request next time, Alec. Please do. And that's the thing. Like, if I get it wrong, one, I want to know because that means I have work to do. And two, cool, that means something is wrong with this divination, either session.
Not necessarily, because not all divinations are meant to look forward, backwards, or between.
True.
But that's also part of discernment. Like if you know your system does not work for past readings, it is okay to straight up tell somebody this won't do jack shit if you're trying to figure out the past.
Yeah. Like if your div system can't call people out, is it really a div system? Right, exactly. And that's exactly what I'm getting at, right? Is, are you actually divining anything? Are you receiving actual information? Or is it just actual random chance, right? Is the tiles that you're throwing down, do they mean anything?
In some cases, no.
Yeah.
I mean, and like that's the thing is like sometimes you're gonna get a reader who is literally just cold reading people, and that is irritating and frustrating and bullshit. But like, you actually kind of, especially if this is somebody that nobody else in the community has gone to or nobody else in the community has vetted, that's going to be a big deal, actually.
The difference between magic and vibes. Exactly. No, like, can it make the corn grow?
Yep.
Can this tell me what is actually happening? And if you're going to 3 different diviners and all 3 of them tell you the same thing and that thing is accurate, great, you have 3 good diviners. If you're going to 3 different diviners and they're all telling you wildly different things, right, some diviner's gonna pick up this and that, and you might get different details and you might get different perspectives on it, and that's all fine. But if you're getting wildly different stories, if someone is telling you that this god loves apples, and the other one's telling you no, they hate apples, and the third one's telling you actually they don't consume food at all and find the idea just terrible in general, you're at square one, right? You have no useful information.
Right. This actually comes up in lore discussions quite a bit. Like, does Odin eat the offerings? You will get some people who will die on the hill that Odin eats no offerings. He only feeds them to his wolves. I don't believe that. But if you're going at a purely lore-based response, that is a valid reading of the lore.
Mm-hmm.
This is also where we can get into talking about like what sources you're using for discernment are important, which we're kind of like doing with this particular. We've already talked about, but it's also something to keep in mind that when somebody says, in my experience or in my research, you have to consider the tools at hand that are available. Can this person read the old sources? I can't. If I tell you my understanding of the lore, I am filtering that through at least another person.
Yep.
Because can I read some of the Old Norse? Yes. I've read enough Old Norse that I can read some of it, but I'm not functionally literate in Old Norse.
Right. You are filtering it at least through a translator.
Right. Who may or may not agree with other translators which is why having multiple translations on a project is really, really, really fucking important.
Yes. And why getting different translations is also highly recommended, right? Because they're going to capture different elements. And this is also the other person that you're going through that's kind of hidden here is also the person who wrote it down. So, you know.
Right. And so when it comes to like spiritual questions, and this doesn't even have to be all that impactful. It can just be, does this spirit like X? It gets a lot harder if there's no lore for them. In my own case, like for instance, there is some lore about Dvergar working with iron.
Mm-hmm.
There's also lore about Dvergar not liking iron, and discerning what the fuck that's about is fun. And then there's the question of, are the Svartalfar different from Dvergar? Most people gloss them the same. I don't. And when you're intentionally disagreeing with interpretations of spiritual matters based on literally two references, having some fucking humility is a good thing, right?
It is.
So in my case, like the Svartalfar want me to develop a workshop somewhat similar to the ones I did for the Dvergar.
Mm-hmm.
Make me a workshop where people can come meet us. We have work to do. Okay, cool. All right, so in order to be intellectually honest, I should say there's literally two sources of lore for the Svartalfar, and most sources believe that the Svartalfar are the Dvergar. That is, most sources believe that the Dark Elves are actually dwarves. And I am going to disagree. Here's why. Here's how. That's the premise of the workshop.
Right.
Being intellectually honest with where your map comes out of that you're using for discernment is so fucking important, because it sets up all the dominoes for whether or not somebody should trust your interpretation, especially if they're a lore purist.
Yep. Well, and this is also like, it's also reasonable people can disagree, and that's
Right.
fine. Right? Like, this is actually a spot where you and I disagree. It's not material because I don't have heavy relations with either. But like for me, Svartalfar and Dvergar, I gloss them as the same.
Which is fine.
Right. And reasonable people can disagree about things.
I actually invite people to disagree with me on this. I actually take it a step further, because I differentiate the Dogalfar from the Svartalfar from the Dvergar.
Interesting. Okay.
But usually that's my general approach to when something has a particular name. I treat them as separate people.
That's fair.
That is ultra cautious on my part, and I recognize that.
Yeah, no, 100%. And I'm kind of on the middle ground there, where I make differentiations that other people don't necessarily. But like in this case, I would gloss all three of those as the same.
Which is I want to emphasize, is a completely legitimate approach.
Yeah, absolutely. Again, reasonable people can disagree about things as long as it's a reasonable thing to disagree on.
Right. There are also times when spirits or other energies might be clouding or shifting the reading or the div tool, which is a really important point too. Yeah. I mean, if we're going to talk about magic, not just vibes, most of the spirits you're talking with have access to magic, even if they don't have the wherewithal or the training.
Yeah. Well, and that's actually another thing too, is whenever I'm doing a reading for someone, I shouldn't say whenever, 90% of the time when I'm doing a reading for somebody, I am telling them beforehand, this is who I'm talking to. This is why I'm talking to that person. If you don't like that, go find a different diviner. I can use at least a couple of my divination tools, like the runes, to talk to most gods or spirits. Most of the time it's fine, but it's at least being filtered through the runes, which I understand as individual spirits. So if that doesn't jive with you, you're going to a different diviner, because I'm not changing that.
Right. And if you want me to use Aphasia Grammatica, I am not the person for that.
Right. And this is why I'm doing that. One, like if I'm using the runes, well, I've got a good relationship with the runes. It goes back for years. I've been reading it for years, and with X level of accuracy. So yeah, I can stand by this reading. If you don't jive with that, that's fine. On the flip side, if I'm doing a bone reading, I'm talking to the pack spirits.
Right.
If you don't want the answer from the pack spirits, I can either grab a different tool, or you can go talk to somebody else.
Yep. And being intellectually honest helps people learn if they wanted to get into it themselves, because now there's something to look up. Yes.
Yep.
And that's true also of like runes. Like if somebody's coming to me, I've had this happen where somebody was like asking me a question about a god that was completely unrelated to heathenry. Can you divine on X with the runes? Yes, I can divine on damn near anything with the runes. I happen to find them incredibly flexible that way. But I'm also talking to 24 individual spirits based in a very particular cultural context.
Yep.
So if it absolutely has to be, say, somebody wants a divination, this popped up with divination with Apollo, I think, some years back with me. And they asked me, like, point blank, can I actually divine on this with runes? Should I use another method? I said, well, since I don't have any gas vents handy, that option's out. But if what I give you isn't feeling right, go somewhere else.
Yeah.
If you think I am completely full of shit, I will give you your fucking money back. Not a problem.
Exactly. And that's
generally speaking, I won't. But like in this particular instance, it was like, you're trusting me. You're going out on a limb here.
Yeah.
This is also a fun, good point. Apollo in particular, I don't think would give a fuck.
Yeah.
Hi, Kai.
Oh, hi, Kai. I did not realize that was you. That is very funny. I was like, K, who is this K person? Clearly they know me. I'm racking my brain for who starts with it's Kai. That tracks. Anyway.
That John Lemon's really fucking good.
Yeah. They tend to knock it out of the park. I'm not always in the mood for everything that they put out, but like,
I can't do any of the ones that have fucking what's that spicy shit? Peppers.
I love you. You forgot the word for peppers.
Yeah. What's really funny about that is I literally planted a shitload of jalapenos in my garden. Could not think of the word.
But you don't have to put your peppers in your fucking booze though, so
Bleh. I can't do it. I tried. When I went to the St. Ambrose Brewery, they gave me a flight and something with some sort of jalapeno was in there, and I was just like, no. I took one sip and was like, that is god awful. What the fuck is that?
Which is really funny because some of my favorite meats have peppers in them.
Wow.
And I'm not a person who has a really high spice tolerance. And capsaicin, the chemical in peppers that make them spicy, is alcohol soluble. But so like it really comes through if you put any kind of peppers in your alcohol. Two of my favorite meads are three of my favorite meads because one's an alteration of the other. Cherry Chipotle by Bee Nectar, and then they have another one which has cherries. Cherry Chipotle, shockingly, has cherries and chipotles in it. So it's reasonably spicy, not crazy hot, but reasonably spicy. And another one of theirs has pineapple and some other kind of pepper in it, and I don't remember what it is, and I don't remember the name of the mead. It's also by Bee Nectar. Devil's something, I don't remember. Also very good, in my opinion.
That's cool. I've tried most of the pepper meads that they produce, and I just can't do it.
And that's like perfectly reasonable.
More for y'all.
Two of my favorite meads, and then the third one is actually my favorite mead to date, which is Dragons Are Real, which is they took cherry chipotle, aged it in dragon's milk barrels, and then on also vanilla beans and cocoa nibs, and maybe something else. Fucking delicious. It's my favorite mead to date.
You take the peppers out and I'm there with you the whole way, but
Oh, it's so good. And I understand, like, don't get me wrong. Eventually we'll go to Bee Nectar and I will order a whole flight of that and I will laugh at you while you sit there and glare at me over it, and it'll be great.
I know. And this is why we work well together. I mean, the thing, okay, so getting back to discernment, like, that's actually that's a really good segue because palate matters, right? If I get along with certain spirits and Maleck doesn't, or vice versa, you don't want me discerning on the spirits I don't get along with. If I don't want to fuck with the Fae, you don't want me reading on them generally.
Yeah.
Or I might be the perfect person because I have such an antagonistic relationship with X or Y spirit that I'm not going to baffle you with bullshit, and I'm not in the fairy propaganda crowd.
Yep. No, and that's those are good points, and also why context matters, right? Because it's like, okay, cool. Am I being misled by this spirit? Go to someone who either has zero relationship with that spirit, or a very distant one, or one that's not very good.
And it's okay if you want to have a discerning conversation with somebody that is ass over tea kettle in deep with the Fae about the Fae. Actually, I usually prefer those because that means the person has relevant experience to discern ice cream from bullshit.
And also, here's the thing. You don't have to pick just one or the other. You can do both.
That's the beauty of having free will.
Right? You can say, I'm going to go to 3 different diviners. One has no experience with them. One is actively antagonistic, and one is deep in.
Yep.
Cool. And I get all three versions of this information.
I hate pepper mead from Emily. I'd be willing to try if made by the right place, but I've had some horrible pepper meads. Same.
No, fair.
Certain spirits might not want certain people reading for you on them because of different relationships. Also very, very, very fucking true. I also find this is something where if I have had people come to me and ask me to do a reading on Orisha with the runes, and I've point blank said, I'm not that motherfucker.
Nope.
You need to talk to somebody who's in the religion. If you want to talk about the Loa, you need a Hungan or a Mambo. If you want to talk about Orisha, you need to talk to an Olarisha or an Ifa or one of their specialty diviners whose name escapes me at the moment. Not a Babalao. I think that's. Anyway, point being is I'm not the specialist to ask because I'm not a fucking specialist.
Right.
Like discerning is also knowing your fucking place.
Yes. Kai says, I always tell people to get things confirmed by 2 or 24 diviners. And this is actually going back to, I agree, but also going back to a thing that Sarenth said earlier, there is a point where you are getting so much fucking divination that it's not, like, you are missing the point.
Yep. Yeah, if you can't operate because you need to divine whether or not you should eat that sandwich, the tool is using you, not the other way around.
Yeah. And there's a certain point where it's like, and I've actually seen this happen and been the diviner for this actually a couple of times where someone had gotten so much divination that the divination they started getting was spitting out results of, stop fucking asking, we already told you.
Oh, God. I used to get this a lot when I was professionally divining. I would get repeat customers. I had one person try to come in 3 weeks in a row. And the first week was really funny to me was I was relatively new as a professional diviner. And I hadn't seen this happen before, where every time this person came in, they handed their $20, $30 over to the cashier, came back, and I did my shuffle. I did my shuffle in front of them, cut the cards, had them cut the cards. Boom, 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 boom. Okay. Went through the reading. They come back a week later. Same deal. Boom, 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 boom. Literally the same fucking reading. You could have taken a picture. It would have come out the exact same way. They come back a third week in a row. We do this whole rigmarole where I'm cutting the deck and I'm shuffling and then they cut the deck. There should be no way, but they get the literal same exact fucking reading. And I just go, you should probably just go get your money back because you're literally getting nothing different. Come see me in a month when this is no longer valid.
Right.
Or when you've actually done the thing.
Right. When you've actually done something about it and you're not just asking for a different answer to the same question, come see me then.
Like, holy fucking shit, people. Like, I've literally had this happen. This is not the only time. I had this professionally happen when I was doing runes. It was literally the same rune reading for this person twice. And it was like, honestly, if you're seeing a diviner more often than once a month, it needs to be for something relevant, and it needs to be something that's not a repeat of the same question or related.
Right. Another thing that I've had happen was someone had come to me for confirmation divination, and they'd already been to 4 other diviners.
Jesus fucking Christ!
And it was an important question, and
sure.
I fully understood where they were coming from. And the answer that I got, and I told them this, was stop fucking asking. Right? It was fucking stop asking. We have given you the answer. And I had to ask because I didn't know how many other diviners that they'd been to. And I was like, have you gotten this checked with anybody else? Like, what's going on here? And they're like, you're number 5. I'm like, oh, this makes sense. Okay, yeah, the answer is stop fucking asking. You already have your answer. Just act on it.
Yeah, you're fishing for an answer at a certain point.
Yeah, and it was kind of a, we've already told you, you're waffling. Stop waffling. Either believe us or don't.
Shit or get off the pot.
Yeah, right. And that's fine. Whatever you're going to do with it, that's not my place, right?
Right.
But, do one or the other.
I think where the metal of so much of this meets the meat is, are you going to do anything with it? Because it's not enough to discern. Discernment is an active process of not only self-discovery, but experience. Useful discernment is used. It's earned. Like being able to discern past a certain point of, I've read the sources. Okay. Do you know these spirits at all? Do you understand them at all? Are you going off of anything other than vibes you saw on social media with regards to this God?
And this is where the combination of experience and community is really, really useful, because on the one hand, this actually goes back to the thing that the final part of Estrella's question, which was maybe an exploration on how to get a feel for what kind of spirits you sense around when woo shit is going down, right? How do you build your instincts? How do you build your gut reactions? How do you build your sense of this is what's happening and know that it's accurate? And that takes time and it takes experience. And when you don't have experience of your own, you need to be able to lean on somebody else's in order to be safe and accurate.
This is why I lean so heavily on people doing spiritual hygiene. Because if you're coming into a situation unclean, unwashed, and frazzled, you are not in a headspace where you're going to be fully receptive to information.
Yep.
Or you're only going to be receptive to the information that can get through your stack.
And it might be, and what you do get might be jumbled, right? When we had David Shee on last episode, he talked about how he had a divination where the client had so much pollution on them that it was interfering with his reading, right? He had to say, go do all these cleansings and then come back, and then we'll talk about the issue. You have to get rid of all of this pollution before I can actually figure out what the hell is going on.
Right. Honestly, like to a certain degree, like that's no different than needing to make sure a patient is clean and ready to is prepped.
Right, 100%. The thing is, not everyone knows this. When you go into surgery, when you are on the table and unconscious, they clean you. Yep. That doesn't mean don't take a shower beforehand. Absolutely do that. There are horror stories of nurses having to like scrape dirt off of people before they can get to their skin. Don't put nurses through that, and 2, that's not safe. That's not good.
Right.
Their methods are not designed to do that. Their methods are going to be much finer than that.
There's cleaning and then there's cleansing. There's cleaning and then there's disinfecting.
Right.
You can be clean but not disinfected. You can be disinfected but not clean, and you can be both of these things but not the third. So
yeah,
like make people's lives easier and just come in as fresh and clean as you can to a reading.
Right. And also like being able to lean on someone else's experience. This is where like we go to have community, right? Where I don't know, say for example, if I knew nothing about Odin, but I felt I was getting a call, going to Sarenth is a good idea. Look at the last name. What is it? Odinson. Hey, this guy might have a clue about how to handle the old man. And
I don't know. He might be completely full of shit.
Might be, but there's a chance, right? And being able to lean on, and frankly, I did when I first got started, right? I came to you because, hell, my teacher at the time threw me at you, not in a teaching capacity, but in a, hey, you need this reference, because I was having very intense experiences with the old man that ended up with him giving me the name Odinson. And I looked at you and told you that, and you said, oh, fuck. And then we continued talking because you knew that I needed your help.
I think this is also something where age in the religion doesn't matter. I recently made a TikTok about this where, like, there's a difference between an elder and somebody who's old in the religion. There is a difference between somebody who has relevant experience with spirits versus somebody who's just been in the community.
Yep.
And this is also a part of discernment that unless you're in the community, you're from the inside looking out is going to be the only way to see it, because you can get somebody who's been in the craft for 30 years but can't magic their way out of a fucking paper bag.
Yep.
And I am not shitting on people by saying that. I really want to emphasize that. But I have run into 30-year elders when faced with simple questions about how the universe works in ways that are very fundamental to how magic operates, couldn't answer my questions. That's a fucking problem.
It really is. And there is also, so you do get to a point where simple questions become complicated because you know so much.
Right.
But that's a different thing. Right. If you ask me about, and to be clear, I am not a geneticist. I do not have a PhD or anything even close to a level of information. If you ask me, how do genes operate? I can give you the basic answer that I can give to a 6-year-old, and I can give you the bachelor's degree level answer that is actually much more accurate. I cannot give you the PhD level answer, but how are proteins made? I can give you a basic answer, or I can give you a very complicated answer. And unfortunately, the complicated answer is also kind of full of holes because there are just things we don't know.
Or we know enough to make bridges across the gaps.
Right. Like,
and we don't worry too much about the gaps. We're just like, we can get from one side to the other. Fuck it.
Yeah, like we know that this and this probably happens. We haven't been able to prove it, but when they finally demonstrated, excuse me, very burpy tonight, I apologize. When we finally demonstrated the Higgs boson particle existed, the God particle existed. It's like, oh yeah, I mean, we've known that existed for 10, 15 years before that, but it was only theoretical. We knew it was there, we just couldn't prove it. And am I painting again with a broad brush? Yeah, but we knew it was there, we just hadn't demonstrated it was there yet.
Being able to explain complicated things simply is the sign of useful knowledge, though.
It is. Absolutely.
Yes, and also explaining where the explanation stops becoming useful.
Right, and that's where I'm giving a rambling explanation. I apologize because I got off track. But what I'm trying to say is there is a spot where an expert will say, I can give you the simple answer, or I can give you the complicated answer that is very full of holes. Knowing the difference between, oh, they gave me the simple answer that is technically correct, or technically incorrect, but is close enough to be useful, is very different than like, oh, well, I mean, they weren't able to answer my question, but were they able to not answer your question in a very in-depth way, right? This is the opposite of your example, Sarenth, of like, oh, he wasn't able to answer my question. Yeah, because your question doesn't necessarily have a simple answer.
Right. Well, it's like when people say, does Newtonian physics still matter?
Yes.
Yes. Is it an accurate model of the universe?
Absolutely.
No. Is it an accurate measure of forces? Some.
Yeah. For everyday life, it mostly works.
Right. Well, that's the thing about Newtonian physics and why it's stuck around so hard, because it's useful.
Yeah, right.
Does it explain everything? Fuck no.
Absolutely not. For those at home, Newtonian physics is what you understand as physics from high school and most of college.
Yep.
Most of the things that you understand as physics is Newtonian physics. It's wrong. It doesn't work for a bunch of in fact, actually, probably most of the universe. But it does work here in our gravitational field actually quite well. So it's useful enough to be correct most of the time.
Right.
There are some edge cases with like aviation and stuff where it becomes less useful, but it's still mostly useful.
I mean, the long and the short that I'm trying to get to, though, is that even if a model of the universe, for instance, or a model of how this spirit works is not 100% accurate 100% of the time, if it's useful 90% of the fucking time, it still works.
Oh, 100%.
And when we're talking about discernment, when we're talking about can you separate ice cream from bullshit, ice cream and bullshit should be very separate from each other. You should be able to discern these things. If you can't, there's a fucking problem.
And don't I eat either one.
Right. Like, try the thing about so much of the discernment process is that it is informed. It is informed. And if you're not dealing with information, you're probably not dealing with anything besides well-wishing or horseshit.
Yep.
And it's really easy to fall down all kinds of rabbit holes that trap you and suck you dry of resources, money, time, energy, and experience.
Yep.
It is amazingly easy to waste your time.
Yep.
Like, honestly, this is why so many creators on TikTok frustrate the absolute piss out of me, because they'll produce these stupid ass videos like, oh, Hecate, like the real popular one right now is, oh, Hecate is calling to you, and they're selling a fucking Hecate wheel in the TikTok shop.
Yeah, sure.
I hate that shit. I hate it because it makes life so much harder. I feel for the hell poles because, a while back it was a tarot trend. Sometimes it was a rune trend. Oh, this rune is for you. No, the fuck it isn't. You're just trying to sell people shit. And you know what? Get your bag, but just be real about it.
Right. Like, yeah. This goes back
I'm a professional diviner. You will pay you will pay me to divine. But I'm not going to sit here and bullshit you, and I'm certainly not going to crawl into your DM saying, I feel a vibe with you. We need to connect. No, we fucking don't. Unless you're interested in paying me $50 an hour to read for you, I don't fucking care.
Right. And that's the thing. Like, I'm not going to fucking, like, do I occasionally get flash traffic for other people? Yes, mostly it's Sarenth. But
mostly it's people that I'm in direct community with where it's relevant.
And
I very, very, very rarely, and I couch the shit out of it when it's somebody that I am not in direct community with.
Well, and here's the thing. If I get flash traffic for somebody that I'm not in community with, I file that under not my fucking job.
Right.
And if it becomes my job, then guess what? It's my job, and somebody's gonna fucking pay me for it, whether it's the spirit or the person, right? Like, that's it. Like, this is not my fucking business until you make it my business, which is not a spirit showed up and told me a thing. That doesn't make it my fucking business.
Honestly, like, sometimes discernment is as simple as, will the lady in TikTok scream, put it back at me if I pick this thing up? I can't remember her fucking username, but every time I see some stupid shit on TikTok, she always comes to mind. Because it's like, a basic discernment process is, if this lady's going to yell at you to put it the fuck back, don't fucking do it.
Right.
And I'm saying that kind of tongue-in-cheek because all of us have done the stupid thing of, I want to go poke it and see what happens because, sometimes you feel the need to poke a bear. But,
sometimes. But that doesn't make it a good idea, right?
No!
I have lived through this. Please don't do it again is a very real form of advice. Or as Kai says, is this my circus?
Yeah, same.
I love her so much. And yeah, it's a, is it your circus? Are these your monkeys? Why do you care? Building up a level of experience that will tell you, does this smell right?
Poking is fun.
Ancient curses aren't. Yes. And brave words from the bear. That is very funny, as both Sarenth and I have some bear alignment. Some is doing a lot of heavy lifting in that sentence.
The thing, too, is like, is this person's viewpoint relevant? Like, when people will ask me, well, what's your feeling on X or Y? I've had occasion where I've looked back at them and gone, why the fuck do you care?
Yeah.
Like, basic part of discernment is, am I in community with you? Am I your gothy? Am I your spirit worker? Am I your friend? Am I your community member? If no to any of these, why the fuck do you care about what I have to say?
Yeah.
I know we're on a talking show here, but this is basic discernment. Like, if it's not applicable, if the boot doesn't fit your foot, don't fucking worry about making it fit.
Right. And that's like, okay, if somebody comes to me and they have a lot of experience in core shamanism and they're asking me questions, my worldview is so wildly different from theirs that it's probably not going to work.
Right.
Right? Like my opinions are going to be so different from yours that most likely the advice that I'm going to be able to give you won't fucking matter. And vice versa. If you're a heavy core shamanist, I don't care what you have to say. And I don't mean that disrespectfully. Would you normally walk into someone's house and assume you know the house rules? Exactly. Right? Like if someone with a heavy core shamanism background comes up to me, I'm not going to ask them for divination because their worldview is so out of sync with mine. I don't care. Does that mean that they're bad? No.
Sometimes core shamanism can have really excellent results and really deep, powerful work to do. I don't have a lot of patience for it.
Exactly. And the same thing.
It doesn't make core shamans bad people. It doesn't make what they're doing or trying to do bad.
No.
Actually, that's one of the things that has been kind of revelatory about some core shamanism work. Like for instance, the Foundation for Shamanic Studies in Scandinavia is actually a modern iteration that is actively seeking to rebuild Sather in the Scandinavian countries that it's found in, which is great, should happen, which I'm actually taking as separate from the core shamanism lineage of Michael Harner. Because cool. It has an informed basis for what it's doing and why.
Cultural context, yeah. No, and I would one, I would agree with that, and two, neat. Yeah, cool stuff. Am I going to go there? No, because the history.
It's in fucking Norway.
Yeah, well, that aside, like, am I going to listen to what they have to say?
Or Denmark in this case.
Probably not, because again, the core shamanism thing bothers me, but like, or like Wicca, for example, leaving the shamanism aside, Wicca, for example, right? Like, I don't care for Wicca. Okay? What does that fucking matter to a Wiccan? Like,
shouldn't matter at all.
Shouldn't matter at all.
You're not initiated. Who gives a shit?
It's amazing how free minding your business is.
Yes.
It really is. That said, say a spirit walks into your house and is causing problems. Discerning what the fuck is going on.
Who are you going to call?
Who are you going to call? And a lot of that comes down to, can the people that you are calling for help actually fix the fucking problem? One of the last episodes of AGF, not the last episode, but one of the last episodes with the Mother Tree Shamanism episode, Eddie, I believe, told a story about how he went to a bunch of different core shamanism teachers and elders and practitioners and etc. And they all gave him different answers, and it wasn't solving the problem. And it didn't matter how many he went to, none of their advice solved the problem. And then he went to a single Mongolian shaman, and within like a month, his life was wildly better, and it just continues improving.
Right.
Cool. Did it make the corn grow?
Right. And a lot of what we're talking about when we're talking about discernment is the process of verification of experience, verification of understanding. And part of that is having an intact, capable, fully realized world that you're living in.
Yes.
Part of the problem with core shamanism is that it has none.
Yeah. It is.
Which is why this is actually why I'm much more cool with the FSS in Scandinavia than I am with other core shamanism outfits, because it's actually so far away from core shamanism that it works with basic heathenry as like its default setting for its worldview.
Yeah.
So I don't really. It's not what I do as a Saith worker, but it's close enough to where I'm like, these people are not completely full of shit, and I can actually trust some of these people.
Yeah.
Like Annette Host, for instance. I will blatantly name her because I've watched her Sather videos a couple of times now. They're great. She has some views that I will fully disagree with, and I will happily disagree with her on. But if somebody's like, is there a series of videos you recommend on watching for Sather? That's one of them.
Cool.
Like, but, and here are my caveats.
Yeah. Well, it's like on the AGF server the other day, Estrella again asked a question about a different book, and then it devolved into a conversation about 6 Ways by
Right.
Aidan Watcher. And I give a long explanation of, this book is fantastic. here are a list of caveats that are longer than my recommendation for the book. However, please understand, I do recommend this book.
Right.
And I do. Are my caveats legit? Yes. Would I say that to Aiden Watcher's face? Absolutely. I still recommend the book. I wish I'd had it 5 years ago. Like
honest to the gods, like this, the discernment is needs to be couched in a cogent worldview in order for it to be fucking useful. Otherwise, you are just throwing shit at the wall and seeing what sticks, which is fine if you don't have a central idea of how the world works. But when we're getting into deeper topics of discernment, you need to have something to hang your hat on.
And this is actually where a lot of people are going to say, but Maleck, Pack tradition doesn't have a viable cosmology yet. It's too fucking new. You don't know how the world works yet. Yes. Which is why we're extraordinarily cautious and keep running into things face first. And it's painful, and I don't recommend it.
Well, I mean, above and beyond that, you actually do have a somewhat cogent worldview. It's animist.
We do. And that is the thing. Is like we start from basis of polytheism and animism and kind of build from there. And a lot of it is based on neat. Well, we figured out this thing. Cool. Does the next thing we learn line up with this thing? Yes. And that's why like we established like a few hard facts about it and then move from there. And some of those things do, as Kat is pointing out, so many rewrites.
Sorry.
You're fine. And that's true. There are a lot of rewrites. There's many, many rewrites. I've talked about that on the show over years. You can trace the course of it.
Yep.
Absolutely a thing. But a lot of it is increases in depth. Taking notes makes it science. Exactly. It is revisions, really, is honestly probably a better term than rewrites. It's revisions. There is very little that has been demonstrated. Oh shit, that was completely wrong.
Right.
It's more of, oh, I had a 6th grade understanding of genetics, and then I got to high school, and I got a high school understanding of genetics, and then I got to college, and I got a college level understanding of genetics, and then I went to grad school, and now my understanding of genetics is very different. Right now, we're probably in high school as far as the Pack tradition is concerned. Dear spirits, I need more members with thumbs. That is a funny inside joke because some members of Pack tradition have thumbs and can write things down, and some very much do not. I do not have thumbs. I have a very hard time writing things down. It just won't work. Yeah, just like science. We don't know all the natural laws and things of our world. Exactly. Right? Like, very young tradition. High school, sex ed, coming up. Y'all have to stop with the inside jokes. Not everyone gets them. They're hilarious. Not everyone gets them.
Well, the thing is, like, just like science, this is where scientism and science differs.
Yes, yes, yes.
This is where dogmaticism within religious contexts differs from a religiously informed worldview.
Yes. And that's really the thing is everything is constantly under revision, even in living traditions that go back 2,000 years. Are some things set in stone? Sure. But also stone wears away with time.
Yep.
Like things change over time. That is natural. That is the way of the world. That's fine. But also having a ground on which to stand is a lot more useful than falling through the air.
Yep.
I'm also mostly kidding about the inside jokes. Please keep them coming. I just
keep
them
coming.
God damn it. Anyway, what was I saying?
But the thing with a lot of the discernment writ large is cogent worldview matters, experience matters, who you're talking to in what capacity matters, what our particular backgrounds are matters. If somebody comes to me and says, well, what do you think about the Alfar? If you had asked me even 6 years ago, I would have said I fucking don't.
Yep.
Now, they're very frequently on my fucking mind.
Yep.
So even my strident opinions on don't fuck with them can change over time.
Yes. And also, and this is the thing that I meant to say earlier and then kind of rabbit holed away from, the weight of the decision that you are making matters a lot with the terms of the level of discernment, right? The example of giving a spirit a glass of water versus a big possessory ritual. Yeah, but also like personally held beliefs. I hold a bunch of personal beliefs about myself, about the world, about gods and spirits that are mine and don't matter to anybody else.
Yeah, well, that's the thing. Like, if you don't give a flying shit about Odin, why are you coming to me and asking me about Odin? I've had this happen in online contexts before where somebody was like trying to get in a fucking argument with me about the old man. And it's like, bitch, why do you care? You have no, blatantly said, I have no intention of worshiping him. And it's like, then what the fuck are you yelling at me for?
Right.
Why do you care?
And like, what does my God spouse relationship with Angrboda, what the fuck does that have to do with literally anyone else?
Right. If you think I'm delusional, that's neat. Next asshole with an opinion is literally 10 feet that way.
Right. And like, guess what? Quite that aside, my relationship with her has nothing to do with anyone else. It doesn't, like, do I know a lot about her? Yes. That is because I did a bunch of research first, and I am not the fucking high poobah of Angrboda worship. Like, fucking my opinion holds no more weight than anyone else's. Who fucking cares?
But to be fair, I will say part of the problem has been intercommunity shit where people assume that fucking a god means that you're their priest.
Yes.
This is a community problem. Some of this has been fostered by god spouses or alleged god spouses.
Yes.
This is something that if you're going to say, I am a god spouse, you will have to deal with in community if you want to be in community with people.
Yep.
It is as pernicious a problem as white supremacy is. If not worse in some cases, because some people will never accept you. Well, they'll take the white supremacist over you.
Okay, yeah. Okay, fair. Yeah. Sorry.
Pernicious not in the sense of this is such a widespread problem. Pernicious in the sense of some of these motherfuckers will make community with fucking anybody that slaps a tattoo on their chest and says, I'm a Viking.
Yeah. But not you, because
you fuck your gods and that's icky.
Yeah, right. But like why is your poobah exactly? Wouldn't you like to know?
I mean, but this is like the thing of discernment, like Kai said earlier, like knowing what was it? It's amazing how freeing minding your business is. Like, yeah, like legit, but also sometimes it is your business because you're the only one willing to talk on a subject.
Sure. And like, if somebody comes to me with God spouse questions, I'm happy to give as much of my perspective as is relevant. Not that I'm required to, but I'm happy to. But also, like, that's my perspective. I'm not right all the time, and also that may or may not apply well to your situation. And
relevance turns out matters.
It matters. And don't blow your life up, and don't make fucking oaths over my experience that may or may not apply to you. Right? Like, and I've seen this happen. I've seen experienced practitioners blow their lives up over situations that they refused to get good discernment on.
Yep. I've seen it way too many times. Way too many fucking times. And it's like, people are like, oh, well, it's just a one-off. It's like, no. When you're this long, and I've been a heathen for almost 20 years now. Motherfucker, the amount of people that I've seen blow their own lives up with no outside input and no internal anything before they go make that leap is amazing.
Yeah. I've seen someone blow up, someone that I held in high regard, blow up multiple relationships that they, like spiritual relationships that they'd held for over a decade, for longer than I have been practicing, over the course of months, when quite frankly, all of the discernment told them, hey, something's not right. You're not paying, like, something's wrong with what you're doing. Don't do that.
Right. I mean, and this also, like, discernment is also, at what point do I find my exit because this person isn't going to listen?
Yep.
Like, discernment is that, but it's also, again, minding your business is free. The other thing with discernment that I really want to kind of emphasize is, cogent worldview, making sure that your spiritual hygiene is on tap and done, because that'll make life so much easier in terms of discernment later on. But also, not only the people that you build community with, but the people that you accept into community are going to become part of your milieu.
Mm-hmm.
And being a little discerning about who comes into your circle will save you a lot of heartache and a lot of pain later on. It's one of the things that I see as a trend in heathen circles that kind of makes my teeth itch, where everybody calls each other brother and sister and shit. And it's like, nah, you earned that.
No.
Nah, I don't claim familiarity with you just because we're in the same religion. Like, no.
As Kai said in reference to something else, but cooties, no.
Right. Part of that is discerning who is actually in your community, whose opinions actually matter. At what point? Go ahead.
Another thing that is also really important, and this is going to make some other people mad. I'm just on a roll tonight. You also have to know yourself reasonably well.
Oh, yeah, to be sure.
Like, that's actually really important, and the thing that I don't think gets talked about well enough is, like, a huge factor in determining sock puppets from actual spirit voices is, does this sound like something I would say to myself? Is this actually just me doing self-fulfillment prophecy shit?
Is this my trauma rearing its head and just re-traumatizing me?
Right. Is this me? And this is one that I deal with all the time. Is this me feeling like I have to earn love, acceptance, or approval from the divine?
Mm-hmm. Realizing when people in your community are no longer listening to the discernment, you need to step away. That is a hard fucking thing for me to do.
Yep.
Especially if you're in my community, I cling to people pretty hard.
Yep. Hey, me too. Also, Kai,
damn it.
You're welcome. Go ahead.
I refer to my own blood relatives by their government names. Why would I call a stranger by a familial name? Right, that.
Yeah.
Kai will smother you in hugs again.
But like, really knowing yourself well is, I think, and actually I said this when Sarenth, you gave me the writing prompt of how would I train somebody up from scratch.
Yep.
I'd start them off with, one of the things that I would start them off with, along with critical thinking development, is meditation.
Yep.
Why? Because you got to fucking know who you are inside.
Yeah.
That is very important. If you can't tell who you are inside, it's going to be really hard to tell what's you and what's not you.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
That's just it. Let aside approaching things cleanly. Let aside approaching things with focused intention and getting your magic to work. You're not going to know what's you and what's not you.
All right. If you don't know the difference between magic and vibes, you shouldn't be doing magic.
100%.
And I'm sorry if that pisses people off, but if you cannot tell the difference between I have lit this candle with purpose and intention versus this candle is giving off vibes, you shouldn't be fucking doing it.
Well, and also intent, when I talk about intention in a magical setting, that is not, ooh, I want this to happen. That is focusing all of you, as much as you can, all of your will, focus, attention, willpower, every soul part that, and Sarenth with his 27,000 different soul parts, I'm going to make fun of you about that forever. I love you.
I like things neat and tidy.
If you can't focus your mind, your thoughts, your body, your willpower, your magical intention, all of these things, which mean it's a bunch of different pieces, different cultural contexts have different words for them and separate them out differently, etc. If you cannot focus yourself onto a task for at least a little bit of time to get a magical operation off the ground, I sincerely doubt that you are doing anything besides lighting candles and hoping.
Which is fine. If you want to masturbate mentally for a couple of minutes, that's great. That might do something besides make you feel good. Maybe. Perhaps. If you happen to have the right alignment or right spirit.
Maybe.
Maybe if you mentally masturbate at the right hour, you'll hit the right current and it'll happen. But you'll never know if it's anything other than happenstance unless you know what the flying fuck you're doing.
Exactly.
That's the other thing with discernment, is if you don't know what you're doing, you can't discern.
Yeah. And the other thing too is, can you tell, and this is a big thing, like this is a big thing in setting up like scientific experiments too, is can you account for all the confounding factors, right? Can you account for, is this something that was going to happen anyway? Is this something that is just random happenstance? And is this because I did the magic correctly?
Right.
If
you manage to get a job in spite of never putting in an application, somebody's favoring you, or your magic is just fucking amazing, and maybe you should think about actually applying yourself.
Right. I have gotten a job when I asked for it and did the offerings and did the prayers and did the magic about it in a hiring freeze in the middle of COVID, and even my manager wasn't able to explain how I got the job. Despite multiple interviews not actually going super well and a bunch of problems with it. I had that job for 1.5 years. It was actually a really good job while I had it, kind of, mostly.
Start a spreadsheet soul chart. Yeah, you're not wrong. See my website. It's up there.
Shine bright like multifaceted diamond you are, Sarenth. But, you know...
Once Disco Ball Sarenth lights up the room for the dance party. Goddamn right.
Fabulous. But, you know, I've gotten...
I am fabulous.
100%. Happy Pride, everyone.
Happy Pride.
I've gotten a job against all odds when I shouldn't have, when even the hiring manager was like, I don't know how you got through the hiring freeze. We needed you for sure, but you shouldn't have been approved.
Yep.
All but told me that day one. You know.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, okay. Do I believe that was magic? Yes. If someone told me, well, actually, blah, 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 demonstrates that it's not magic. Okay, sure.
I mean, if you are like hardcore atheist trying to convince me magic doesn't exist, I mean, hats off to you, but I'm not here for that conversation because Maleck dropped the call. So I'm just going to sit here and fucking monologue till they come back because you poor fuckers are stuck with me. There they are.
I somehow just kicked myself out of the studio by wiping dust off of my trackpad.
Well done.
That is wow. Anyway, hardcore atheist trying to convince you magic isn't real. Yeah, good luck.
I mean, the thing is, I have no desire to blow the amount of requisite time to convince them that they're wrong, and they have way too much time and energy invested in convincing me I'm wrong for something that they're not in community with me, and I don't care.
Yeah. You know, and like, is that requisite? Is that enough coincidental requisite proof for me to believe that it was magic? Yeah. Does it affect anyone else? No.
Well, this is like when you get into philosophical debates, when we get into debates about could this phenomena have been X, Y, or Z, does it matter becomes much more relevant, because if your central philosophy is the assumption that none of this shit exists or it's solipsism, we're just going to disagree and get fucking nowhere.
Yeah.
If your central idea is completely nihilist, I don't have patience for that shit.
Yeah.
Like, I just don't. Like, sometimes discernment is realizing that this is not the conversation for me. Realizing that there is nothing of value to be had going down this rabbit hole and blowing what energy I've got has been, like Kai was saying earlier, like minding your own business is freeing. It's also knowing whose business you shouldn't mind.
Yes.
Is it directly relevant to you? No, move on.
Yeah, it is irrelevant, as Emily says. It is irrelevant to me if someone else doesn't believe in magic. It's fine if they don't want to engage in it. It is useful for me. I will go with my tangible results. They are fine to go with theirs. Mine make my life better.
Right.
Exactly. Right.
Because I mean, at the end of the day, like atheists and theists are fighting a battle that has literally waged for over 3,000 years, and I don't see the fucking good in it anymore.
Yeah.
Where I come down to are mostly political disagreements with anti-theists. Like, if your bedrock claim is that religion shouldn't exist, you have an enemy, not a debate partner.
Exactly.
Better with an asterisk. Magic can go sideways. Interesting. It makes my life more interesting.
Yes. And magic can go sideways. And that is another thing to keep in mind with discernment is knowing your limits, because shit can and will blow up in your face.
I think this also is something I mentioned earlier that I want to kind of address a little bit. I know we're almost coming up on the 2-hour mark.
You're fine.
Spirits can do magic.
Yep.
Not all spirits can do good magic. Not all spirits are competent magicians. Some spirits, in my view, in my experience, are really surprised we can come into their world, just like we're surprised some of them can come into our world.
Mm-hmm.
Like, for lacking of a better term, there are some mundane beings in these other worlds that you can journey into that are very surprised when a human shows up because we're rare. We're not supposed to fucking be there.
Yep.
And that is a process of discernment that I've been able to check with other folks who do journey work. And that is really interesting to me as well, because what that tells me is that there are specialists in other spirit realms.
Yep.
And one of the things of we are people that this tells me on a baseline is that some of these spirits are really good at doing magic. Some of them are shit. And assuming all of them can do magic across the board is a fucking foolish thing to assume.
Yes. And this, assuming that you are working with the specialist spirits who have an interest and capability to affect the mundane world, our mundane world, as we know it, not all spirits are going to have the same specialties. Much like we were talking about, going to Sarenth for shit on the Fae is not necessarily a great idea. Going to certain spirits for certain things is not always a great idea.
Right.
I've talked on the show before about how one of my ancestors, when I went to him with, hey, my boss is being a jerk, what should I do? His answer was murder.
That will solve the problem.
It will create a whole bunch of different problems, though.
It'll also make sure you never have to worry about 3 hots and a cot ever again.
So, you know, I don't go to him with those kind of questions anymore. And in fact, I'm very careful about what I do go to him with, because he is an independent being, and if he gets pissed off, he'll just do things.
This is why I tell people to be careful about the shit that you say around your altars or around your spirits. They might take that as a go-ahead.
Yeah. And frankly, they might not care.
They might not care.
They have your go-ahead. They might just do shit because they're the spirit and they want to.
Knowing how to make sure it doesn't blow up that way again is the discernment sometimes, yes.
Yeah.
And sometimes it's about having the safety gear ready. Also, yeah. Actually, yes. Also, yes. It wouldn't be effective, though.
Being the murder for fixing job problems.
Yeah.
It was a very effective solution that I did not take and will not be taking.
It's a very direct way of solving your problems. I appreciate it. However.
Right. And that's the thing, is like, if I need to do curse work, I know who I'm going to.
Right.
And it's him. Why?
Yep.
Because he's very good at it.
Sometimes they may act up in a way that makes you think your house is haunted. Yep.
Yeah. Sometimes.
I mean, the other thing too is when it comes to a certain Vaetier, if you're in good with, say, Lanvitier, the Lanvitier talk to one another, and they will grapevine across the country on your behalf sometimes.
Mm-hmm.
And shit will happen to somebody that you didn't do anything to. But because you have a good reputation here, it translates to there. The only way that I've been able to figure this out before is because a spirit directly told me, hey, we like you, so we put in a good word with blah person up here. What do you fucking mean? Oh, well, you know how the water flows this way to that way to that way? Yeah, that's how news travels too. Oh. So that's why things went the way they did. Okay. Now, I can accept that, or I can call bullshit, but it's a really neat story either way.
Sure. And this goes back to a lot of the context and the weight of the decision, right? You choose to believe that. Does it hurt anybody that you choose to believe that?
No!
No, not unless you are acting on that information in a greater capacity, in which case you're going to do further discernment on it, right? Hey, is this a tool that I can use to get the job done? Let me do some div on it.
Right. So, like, when it comes to, like, when people will jokingly say, let's raise a nothing pole.
No.
No. Do you know what that fucking does? It displaces the land spirits and pushes them to attack the object that you're pointing them towards.
Yeah.
You have to be very, very fucking careful with that shit.
Yeah. And especially if you have, for example, a close relationship with land spirits, do you want to keep that relationship nice and close?
Right. They may not like that at all. You might destroy your reputation with the Lanvitier doing that.
You know, and spirits, in my opinion and experience, are not all knowing, so you might be able to get away with it for a while.
Yep.
But you might not.
But
How good are you at covering your magical tracks? I'm not great at covering mine. I have some experience, but I'm not super great at covering mine. I'm not doing that shit. I have other ways to curse people if I feel like it.
Right. Destiny says, we like you. See, we did things. Yes. Sometimes that is that. And whether or not you detect that on the back end, you know, is not necessarily discernment. It might just be, if you don't know, you have no idea to check.
Yep. You don't know what you don't know, so
it's not something you can discern.
Well, and this is actually another thing, is asking good questions is very important, and asking enough questions is also very important. A big part of discernment that has come up with pack tradition stuff is we ran face first into a bunch of things, and the spirits were like, what do you mean you didn't know? You took the action. What are you talking about? You didn't know. Why didn't you ask? Oh, you have a taboo? What do you mean you didn't know about that taboo? You initiated.
You're going to figure it out now.
Right. This is the logical consequence of you initiating. Why wouldn't you know that that's the logical consequence? And if you didn't know, why didn't you ask?
Right.
Oh, oops. And so now we ask.
To a certain degree, one of the knock-on effects of getting this oath fulfilled, of putting the runes on my skin, has been every Tom, Dick, and Harry that's ever played God of War wants to walk up to me and start a conversation.
Yeah.
That was my intent. The runes wanted that. I kind of had an inkling that was probably what was going to happen. I didn't realize it would happen as often as it did because God of War hadn't come out yet.
Yeah.
But, yeah. Really fun walking through Mire and some random motherfucker stops me and goes, oh, are those the runes from God of War?
Technically, yes.
Yeah. Yes, they are. Mm-hmm. Oh, cool. Can you do magic with them? Yes. Why? 20 minutes of talking about God of War ensues. Which is funny because I've never actually picked the game up. I've only seen game clips of it. It looks like a game I'd enjoy because I played the first 3 God of War. Haven't played the modern PS4, PS5 releases yet. But it was so goddamn funny. I would have random motherfuckers stop me at Mire and be like, hey, can we talk about these runes that you've got on? What do they mean? Kind of like getting the alphabet tattooed on you. Why? What do you mean? Because they're in order. What?
They're just an alphabet. It's fine. Don't you have groceries to get?
20 minutes later, after they've told me their entire life story and now they're interested in heathenry. It's like, yes, a recruiting tool. That's what I put these on for. I mean, technically speaking, I kind of did, but
you did. I don't envy you that.
Oh, I don't envy me that. It's actually something that comes up quite a bit, especially with some of the recent political things lately. Sometimes being a point of discernment isn't for you or for your community. It's for all the other poor motherfuckers who don't know what's going on and need somebody to talk to. If I mean, being a point of discernment that's out in living color in the community and will talk to people who don't look like me, striking up conversations with folks in full head to toe chador, for instance, or black folks who have struck up conversations because they played God of War once and they wanted to have a conversation about what the runes actually meant. Like, sometimes being a point of discernment is something you get thrust into because nobody else is willing or able to do the work in that moment. And I do not say this to like toot my own horn or anything, but it's coming up a lot more frequently because of politics right now. Sometimes by wearing the symbols we wear out in public, we become that public source of discernment because they have no context otherwise. Yep. You might be the first and only polytheist somebody runs into.
Yep.
So part of being discerning and being a potential source of discernment for other people is that people that are outside the community, whether or not you're prepared for it, might look to you as a source of information.
100%. All right. We have been going for a little over 2 hours. Let's hit some closing thoughts and then jump to the after party for folks who want to.
Sounds great. So I think my closing thoughts on discernment is that it's a continuous process. And that it's one that is based in your personal experiences, in community, in lore, in divination, but also it's the life experiences and the life set that you've got when you start this life. And this is a really good point, really quick. Like, or they only have white nationalist context. Surveys for people will be sent out later. The thing about being a central point of discernment in your community, whether you're being a diviner or a priest, whether you're being a source of information, or in your case, a tradition starter, part of that is an ongoing process of how do I better communicate? Part of that is an ongoing process of how do I better reify my experiences so they're useful for somebody else? A continuous process of self-improvement. And that doesn't mean like whipping your back. It just means a continuous regimen of discipline and work that builds on itself and builds with other people.
Yeah.
That for me is the discernment process. No one person carries it, but it is a process that everybody can engage in with no small amount of impact.
Yes. Generally agree. Yes. Context is king. It matters so much more than anyone gives it credit for, including me. And I never shut the fuck up about context. And critical thought is really the key part of it. You are trying to, so much as possible, gather a preponderance of evidence to support your conclusions. It is fine to revise your position. It is fine to be wrong. These are not weaknesses. These are not sins. The sin is being wrong and then not correcting yourself. If you are never wrong, you are actually wrong all the time. But yeah. Go forth and be discerning, and we will see you in the after party, and if you're willing to be there. It has been really fun. I do think we should hit this topic again at some point, but let's give it at least a couple of months.
At least 6, I think.
But yeah, in the meantime, thank you all for being here. Have a wonderful night, and we will see you next time on 3 Pagans on Tap.